Individuals, households, and overall society must make choices under conditions of scarcity. It requires a setting of priorities. If society decides to devote more resources to healthcare, what does it give up? In this lecture, we will describe the 4 economic resources that determine what society has at its disposal, and we will go on to describe the production possibilities curve, or the ability of an economy to make the maximum level of output given resource constraints. The production possibilities curve, it's society's budget line. In this lecture, we will explain the categories of scarce resources and delineate the nature of society's economizing problem. Apply production possibilities analysis, increasing opportunity costs, and economic growth. And explain how economic growth and international trade increase consumption possibilities. There are 4 categories of economic resources. We will later see that these 4 categories of resources, in combination, provide the maximum amount of output that society can afford. First, there's land. Not only the space, but the natural resources like minerals and forests. It also includes water, wind power, and sunlight. Society's labor pool, those hard-working men and women who provide both physical work and brain power every day. Labor. Capital and capital goods. This category describes stuff that makes other stuff. It's machinery and equipment that provides, in conjunction with labor, society with the ability to make more today and in the future. Note, money and the stock market are not capital. They are just a means for entrepreneurs to acquire capital and other resources. Importantly, capital plays a role in increasing the overall productivity of workers with investment, a key component in determining how much workers are paid. Finally, there is entrepreneurial ability. Entrepreneurs take the risk. Many times, they put up their own money to bring goods and services to market. Business leaders, as entrepreneurs, are the people that take the first 3 categories of economic resources and combine them to achieve maximum output for their firm. All resources are important, but strong entrepreneurial ability can't be overrated. Entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk have made a substantial difference to their companies and society by taking risks and combining resources into products and services that customers want. Because land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability are combined to produce goods and services, they are called the factors of production. Economists use a simple model to describe a country's resource limits. It's called the production possibilities model. This model makes a number of assumptions to explain the concept of limited resources and trade-offs. The assumptions in this lecture include: the economy only makes 2 products. Pizzas, representing a consumer good that households can buy immediately. And capital goods, represented by industrial robots. These robots would have an ability to make things now and in the future. Consumer goods, capital goods. The economy is operating at full employment. There are fixed resources in the short term. There's also fixed technology. Domestic production only, and this is key. And we'll cover an alternative at the end of this lecture. But for the moment, we are assuming domestic production only, no imports. Let's quantify the output that can be achieved under these simplifying assumptions. In this model, society can make pizzas, anywhere from 0 to 4 pizzas, depending upon what consumers are looking for. Note the scale is in hundred thousands. However, each level of pizza production comes with a level of industrial robot production, and vice versa. Your consumer goods are pizzas, your capital goods are industrial robots. In the model, we can make anywhere from 10 to 0 industrial robots. As an example of the trade-offs, we can make 10 industrial robots and 0 pizzas. Pretty much an unlikely combination. Or, at the other extreme, we can make 4 pizzas, but we're not going to get any industrial robots. Nothing allocated for making other stuff. Most likely, society will pick a point somewhere between the two extremes. Let's see what they look like graphically. Okay, we can see point A through E on the graph for this production possibilities curve. A representing 10 industrial robots and no pizzas. E representing 4 pizzas and no industrial robots. There are some interesting things that need to be explained about this curve. We have pizzas running along the bottom, and we have industrial robots on the vertical axis. First and foremost, we can see that the curve is not linear relative to how many pizzas and how many industrial robots we would like to make. For example, as we move from 10 industrial robots and no pizzas, in order to get 1 pizza, we have to trade off 1 industrial robot moving from A to B. However, as we move down the curve, we see that we must give up more industrial robots for 1 additional pizza. This is a good example of opportunity cost, or what needs to be given up to get something else. Second, the area under the curve and directly on the curve is what an economist would call the attainable area. This is what can be made. Any area below the curve implies that the economy is not operating at full employment, or that society is not using all the resources at its disposal. We know that an economy always does not operate at full employment, and therefore, if unemployment was at 10%, we would probably be operating at some point below the curve. Conversely, the economy may want to produce at point W on the graph, but existing resources will not allow society to achieve that objective in the short term. We have both attainable and unattainable on the graph. The law of increasing opportunity cost means that as more of a particular good is produced, its marginal opportunity costs increase. More resources need to be applied to get that additional level of output. The more and more of pizzas that we want to make, the more and more industrial robots that we have to give up in order to make those pizzas. Therefore, to make more pizzas, its marginal opportunity costs increase. The law of increasing opportunity cost is driven by the fact that economic resources are not completely adaptable to alternative uses. Labor required to make pizzas may not be directly adaptable to making industrial robots. The shape of the production possibilities curve displays this lack of adaptability. How can this be explained in another way? Looking at marginal cost, the curve labeled MC on the graph that is upward sloping. It is upward sloping because marginal cost and complexity increases as we increase the quantity of pizzas that we make. You can see this down in terms of the quantity of pizzas moving from 1 to 3, the marginal cost increases. The move from making robots to pizzas is not direct. Likewise, the marginal benefit from consuming more pizzas is downward sloping. Consuming that next pizza does not yield the same benefit as the previous pizza consumed. If marginal costs exceed marginal benefits, represented here by point C on the curve, then society will demand less pizzas and more robots. At the other extreme, at point A, over on the left, marginal benefits exceed marginal costs. In this situation, people will want to consume more pizzas. At the equilibrium point E, the intersection of the two curves, society's demand for pizza and industrial robots is imbalance. In this particular example, the optimal output, point E, says that society would like 10 robots and 2 pizzas. How do we increase the production possibilities curve so that we make more pizzas and more industrial robots? Say 8 pizzas and 14 robots. How do we do that?
In the previous slide, we looked at an economy and made some very simplifying assumptions. We assumed that an economy could only produce 2 goods, robots and pizzas. Capital equipment that can make other things, or pizzas that we want to consume today. Okay? And we could make those in any particular combination on the production possibilities curve. And that if we made more pizzas, we would have to trade off robots. And if we made more robots, we would have to trade off more pizzas. But in any case, we could not produce more than the production possibilities curve, the amount of resources and the amount of capital equipment we have in an economy. We could not produce out beyond the production possibilities curve. We could only produce on it. When we're producing on the production possibilities curve, in terms of whatever mix of robots and pizzas that we would like, we're typically operating at full employment, resources are being used efficiently. Now, if we operate in this area below the production possibilities curve, it's also an attainable area. You can operate below the curve. However, when we're operating below the curve, what we will typically find is unemployment is higher, resources are not being used efficiently, and consumers and producers are not producing all that they want to produce and consume. It is inefficient. The other thing is that we cannot produce outside of the production possibilities curve in the short run. Okay. Production possibilities curve on this first line is pretty much a short run curve. We have a limited and scarce amount of resources, and we can only produce on the curve. How do we get, as an economy, as a society, to a point where we could actually produce at point W? How can we get to the point where our production possibilities curve increases and what was formerly unattainable is now attainable? That we're shifting this curve to the right to where the economy can produce and consume more. There's one way to get there. It is not by consuming more pizzas today. It is by operating to where we make and sacrifice today's consumption in the short term. Remember, there's limited resources. There are scarce resources in the short term. That we compensate by consuming less pizzas and making more robots. That's how we get this curve shifted to the right so that there is more productive capacity in the economy, be that more capital equipment, more businesses being formed that make robots, capital equipment, more infrastructure, etc. A support from the government that allows that capital infrastructure to grow. What it means, though, is we got to consume less pizzas. That's how we get growth. And so what we're going to take a look at on the next couple of slides is two different societies, one which I will call Presentville in the short term, and the other which I will call Futureville in the short term. And let's see the particular mix of robots versus pizzas that this firm wants, that the society wants, and what that means for the long-run production possibilities curve of each of those two markets. Okay, let's take a look at two countries. You could call them two societies. Two approaches to the current situation in the economy and two different approaches to the future situation in the economy. I'm going to label those two particular groups or countries as Presentville, which is shown on the left, and Futureville, which is shown on the right. Each start in the short term with the same current production possibilities curve. In the case of Presentville, they prefer their mix of resources to be more pizza, less robots. They prefer to operate their current production possibilities curve at point P. In the case of Futureville, with the same current production possibilities curve, they prefer to sacrifice current consumption of pizzas and operate their production possibilities curve at point F. More robots, less pizza. Okay? They prefer to build a capital and infrastructure that will allow them to make more things in the future. Okay? So what will happen to each of these as they move through time? Presentville still making robots, still has an opportunity to grow the economy, just like Futureville, only the growth patterns of each of these two markets you can see are significantly different. In the case of Presentville, yeah, their production possibilities curve expands over time in the long run. Okay. However, in the case of Futureville, their production possibilities curve in terms of the ability to make both more robots and consume more pizza is much greater because in the near term or today, they prefer to make more stuff that can make stuff for the future and not consume it all today. They're taking their scarce and limited resources and planning for the future. And therefore, the difference between the growth and expansion in the future of the two different societies or economies is much, much different based upon the decisions between capital formation and current consumption that those two economies made today. It's about present and future choices and where you're going to operate on those curves. So, to close, I want you to imagine two countries, one the United States and one China. And I want you, without me telling you, I want you to mentally think of where you would place the labels of the United States. Which side of these particular societies would you put the United States on, let's say over the past 10 years, and which side would you put the Chinese economy on over the past 10 years or so? It's about present and future choices. The key thing to remember at the close of this chart is you make growth higher by investing in capital equipment that allows that growth to be much stronger moving forward. Sorry, rather than just consuming pizzas today.
Up until this point, we have considered a production possibilities curve that only has domestic production. We've basically looked at a self-contained domestic economy. With international trade, an economy can expand its production possibilities curve and have the opportunity to specialize in what they do best, or where they have a comparative advantage. This particular area of economics is handled in the macroeconomics class. More importantly, international trade can increase the production possibilities curve. It increases the choices that consumers are exposed to through imports, and increases the resource pool of labor for firms, allowing production outside of the domestic environment. So here we have the end of the lecture where I can simply say the production possibilities curve is society's budget. The ability to grow, the ability to expand that curve outside of today's environment depends upon investment, which means people have to save with a higher proportion than they consume.